This video will talk about parabolas. Parabolas are what we get when we graph an equation that has the highest exponent of a 2. So if you look at this equation here that is sitting right above the graph. So for our picture here, we would say that our orientation opens up. Because our parabola has an orientation that opens up, our vertex is at the bottom. This is the vertex. It's this place where the parabola turns around. So the vertex is a minimum. It's the lowest point before it turns back around. If we had a parabola that opened down, the vertex would be way up here on the top, and that would be a maximum. We'll see one of those in just a minute. When we talk about the vertex when we're given the graph, we need to say a little bit more than whether it's a maximum or a minimum. And we want to give the ordered pair of where the vertex is. So they're asking you for the x and y coordinates of where this vertex happens. So this vertex down here, the x value is at +1 and the y value is at -4. So you have to use plain parentheses and just put those numbers in there, the x value, then the y value. The order of those is important. X comes before y in the alphabet, so it's kind of nice that when you list an ordered pair, x comes before y. X value first, y value second. The next thing we can look at from the graph and see is the y-intercept. If you've done lines, you're probably familiar with this vocabulary word. Simply, it just means where does the graph cross the y-axis. This here is our y-axis, and when we look, the graph crosses it down at -3. So it happens at y equals -3. Again, you're just eyeballing it, you're just looking where it crosses and just reporting that value out. Roots are where does the graph cross the x-axis. So you'll see that this happens in 2 places on this parabola. For parabolas, it can happen in one spot. It can happen not at all. There are parabolas that never touch the y or the x-axis. And then there's this other last case where you can have 2 roots. For roots, it's kind of nitpicky. We put them in these we put them in these little swivelly brackets, and we're just making a list of the numbers if there are any. So what are the numbers that it hits the x-axis at? One of them is at -1. The other root happens at +3, and then we just close that swivelly bracket. So we have to differentiate. Vertex, you do an ordered pair, and the roots you don't. So these are not listed in the same way. Kind of nitpicky, but it's important to remember that. And then the last thing I just want to talk about real quick is symmetry. Kind of just to be aware that is there a place that we can fold this parabola where it matches up on top of itself. And on this parabola, if we were to draw this dotted line down and then fold the parabola there, it would match right up on itself. So this symmetry actually happens at an x value of +1. That's what that little red dotted line is. It's at a line that goes down where x equals 1, and that's your symmetry. All right, let's kind of getting used to this whole thing. So I hope I don't pause this halfway through or shut my mute button off so you don't hear me. So I'm going to work. I'm going to try to be conscientious about what I'm doing. Okay, so here's our next graph that we're going to look at. And let's just start it right from the same types of things that we were just looking at. So first of all, our orientation. This one's different. We have a frown face. It's an upside down parabola. So the orientation is down. All right. That means that let me just get rid of this out of the way. Oops. Good. So that means that our vertex is at the tippity top before it changes directions. So it's a maximum. And again, this is the one where we have to list the x and y values. So here's our vertex. Whoops, I'm not sure what I just did. Okay, so our vertex is way up here at the top. The x value that goes with the vertex is -1. The y value is a +4, so that's where the vertex happens, the maximum of that graph. The y-intercept, we just use our eyes, look down the y-axis and see where it crosses. And it's going to happen at the value of y equals 3. Let's see, the next one are the roots. So the roots, again, are where it crosses the x-axis. And we need to list those in those funky brackets. So one of the roots happens at -3. The other root happens at +1. Just to let you know, the word roots also means the same thing as zeros. So if they say, hey, what are the zeros? Or if they say, what are the x-intercepts? That one actually makes more sense, right? Because we're looking at where it crosses the x-axis. And one more word that means the same thing is solutions. Again, I would put these in your notes. This used to confuse the heck out of me. They'd say, like, find the solutions. And I'd be like, well, what do you mean? Or then they'd change it up and they say, find the roots. And I'm like, I didn't realize that roots means zeros, which means x-intercepts, which means solutions. So all four of those words are pretty much interchangeable. And if you can kind of remember that, that will definitely help. Again, if we are looking at symmetry, if someone said, can you draw on the line of symmetry? It's right through the vertex. And so symmetry would actually happen at a value of x equals -1. And that's where you would draw that little dotted line. And it kind of shows that you can fold it there. I think that's probably enough. I don't want to beat a dead horse, so to speak. But those are the main things. Does it open up or down? Once you know that, it's real easy to say whether the vertex is a max or a minimum. Then look at the y-intercepts. Where does it hit the y-axis? And then your last thing are the roots, which is also where it hits the x-axis. And those are your x-intercepts. And that's pretty much the basics of when you're looking at a graph of parabolas. I am going to have one more video if you want to look forward. It's Intro to Parabolas Part 2, and it will kind of talk about these equations. All of the graphs, the two graphs I've used have equations that I haven't mentioned at all, so I want to kind of talk about those a little bit and how they reiterate the orientation and that sort of thing. So if you want a little more information, take a look at that.